UD Pocket. Good. That is exactly what we want. Right. Let's kick off. We're obviously recording this, and I would like to open this up for some conversation as well. We ran this webinar last Monday, was it, Mike? I can't remember now. So we ran this webinar about a week ago. We had about 350 people attended, completely oversubscribed. So we thought, hey, let's run this again, and let's have a quick chat around what's going on in the world at the moment with regard to the need and the benefits of working from home, and I suppose more importantly for most people on this webinar, how can IGEL help, and what is this thing we call the UD Pocket? I'm joined today, as you've seen, by my very good friend Mike. Me and Mike worked together some years back when we were at Absence. We've both been in the end user computing space for far too long, but I'm really pleased that I then went on to Avanti, Mike then went on to Nutanix, and we've both ended up now working for IGEL, and it's an absolute privilege and an honor to have Mike join us at IGEL, but also join me on the webinar today. So I'm going to go through some slides. We're going to do a little bit of talking and not too much, and then Mike's actually going to show us. He's got 2 cameras set up at his home office there, and he's going to talk us through how people can get started and what's achievable with the UD Pocket. Most of you on this call will know that, or at least heard a phrase or a term like this in the past, but work has very quickly become now something we do, not necessarily somewhere we go. Lots of organizations have been talking about this for many, many years. If you've ever been involved in Citrix, you'll know that they use this phrase quite a lot. Vmware have got their version. People have been talking about this concept of being able to work from anywhere, and that your digital workspace isn't necessarily where your workplace is for some time. But I don't think this phrase has ever been as relevant or as important, obviously, as it is today. It's really easy to sort of look at what's going on right now across the globe and just go, all right, yep, everybody needs to work from home because we're going through some tough, challenging, and unprecedented times. But, there are some significant benefits of home working, and I've been involved in end user compute now for about 20 years, and I've helped sell, configure, deploy, and manage products that have been able to help people work from home for a long time. And I'm going to sort of talk about a few of those later. But, ultimately, some people are more focused and productive when they work from home. In fact, I did a survey on Twitter. I don't know whether you saw that, Mike, last week.
Yeah.
I think I got something like 87 responses on it. So not nearly enough to make it a real survey. But the majority actually all said, yeah, working from home, I'm significantly more focused and productive, which is quite interesting. Obviously, if you get the pleasure to look out of a nice window, overlook a nice landscape, well-being is quite important. Before we started this webinar, I was talking about how I'd gone for a walk, admittedly on my own, this morning for an hour while I was on the call. I had my earpods in. I was walking and chatting away, getting some fresh air. There was an online PE session, physical education session, being streamed to 800,000 people this morning. Me and my whole family did that this morning. Hopefully over time, if I do this webinar again in a couple of weeks, you might realize that I've actually lost a few pounds. That would be great. But employee well-being is something that is important. Work-life balance, spending time with children, not having to travel, as well as obviously benefits to the business. There are questions being raised about how much office space do you need. I mean, we've all been through sort of like hot desking scenarios before, activity-based work environments. But maybe there is a future where there isn't as much office space that's needed. There isn't as much traveling. There isn't that need to go into work, and arguably that also helps reduce the carbon footprint. Again, I'm sure many of you have seen it, but if you look at the levels of pollution a couple of weeks back in Italy compared to last week, when obviously the country's on lockdown, you can actually see pollution levels are dropping. There are dolphins swimming in the canals of Venice. If you look at the pollution levels in China this week, they've actually gone back up as China has gone back to work this week. You know, there's a lot of organizations at the moment that actually take that incredibly seriously, and quite rightly so. And, you know, trying to reduce our own carbon footprint as well as doing it for an organizational or corporation point of view is obviously very important as well. But sadly, you know, it's no longer just benefits of working from home. We have now seen reasons why we need to work from home or need to work from anywhere. You know, one of the big worries at the moment is obviously how our economies are going to cope with what's going on at the moment. No one wants to be in this situation, but we have to deal with it to the best we can. And we also have to respect the fact that health has and human life has to come first. But, you know, if you look at just 2020, you've got fires in Australia, you've got snowstorms, sandstorms, you've got tornadoes and hurricanes that are ripping through various different regions throughout the world, as well as what's currently going on with the coronavirus. And so there has become this need to work from home. There is this desperate need at the moment. It seems to be even more topical this week, doesn't it, Mike, about social distancing than it was last week. I mean, not enough people, sadly, are perhaps taking that seriously enough. Obviously, there are key workers out there who, you know, we need to appreciate and thank. They obviously still need to go to work. But for those of us that can, I suppose there's a strong argument that we really should be trying to make an effort. And if we're in a situation where we can work from home, then why wouldn't we try and do that for the better good? The IT industry has obviously seen massive change. Anybody that's been involved in IT, tech, end user computing for some time will know that there's a whole host of events that, you know, folks like us normally meet up at, you know, whether it's Citrix Synergy, whether it's RSA conference, whether it is Cisco Live, for instance. Whilst RSA conference actually went ahead, I think it was right on the cusp. I mean, a lot of these other events have been cancelled, and these events are very important in terms of how we understand new technology, how we get demonstrations of technology, how we find new technology, new vendors, etc. And even this is now changing perhaps how we think about what we need to do in this particular sector. One of the interesting points here, and I appreciate this is an EMEA, a European map, but, you know, one of the interesting things to note is sort of like the number of people who have actually worked from home or never worked from home before. What you'll see here is that Germany is 70 plus people have never worked from home in these regions before. And that's not just a technical shift that needs to take place, but also a cultural one. And so it's going to take some time as we start to try and move people to work from home and allow people to be productive. At IGEL, I'm pleased to say that we have been able to enable all of our employees to work from home. We've got developers set up with the IGEL UD Pocket, accessing a Citrix cloud environment where they're developing the technology. We've been able to offer flexible working hours, so we're allowing our workers to start at 6 and end at 9 so that they can continue to self-educate their children and balance their work-life balance. But, you know, in certain cases, a lot of countries, this is going to be new, and working from home is going to be a challenge. And from an IT point of view, you then start to question, well, how do you manage that? Do you need to manage it? How do you secure it? How do you monitor it? And, you know, all of a sudden, the role of end user computing becomes very, very, very important. I thought I'd share this quote with you. This was Matt, the CEO of WordPress. Millions of people will get the chance to experience days without long commutes or the harsh inflexibility of not being able to stay close to home when a family member is sick. This might be a chance for a great reset in terms of how we work. slightly more positive spin on what's going on at the moment, and one I think that is worth consideration. Yes, there is a need for us to work from home at the moment, but perhaps moving forward, what we might find is that organizations as a whole and business can be conducted in a slightly different way. Perhaps there will be more online meetings as opposed to face-to-face meetings initially, which obviously helps save time, save money, save carbon footprint. So when we look at technology, let's get on to some tech. I think there's a number of different technologies that can be used to help people work from home. First and foremost, I think if you haven't already, then enabling people to get access to email and office productivity applications by deploying something like Office 365 or the G Suite is obviously of top priority. Then you sort of come down to the networking element of it and how do you manage endpoints. And I've spent some time, as has Mike, in deploying these types of technologies before, but lots of people within your organization won't know what a VPN is or how to configure or log into that VPN. And giving someone VPN access obviously allows you to have secure access to corporate applications and data. You might have UEM tools out there, so tools like Intune or Microsoft Endpoint Manager, VMware Workspace 1, Ivanti Landesk type of technology that allow you to manage not just mobile devices, but Mac devices and Windows devices. And those UEM tools can help you remotely manage, roll out new applications, monitor people's activity, for instance. And then in addition to that, you're going to need to make sure you can patch some of those endpoints as well, particularly if any of your laptops or endpoints that are now sat at home are running versions of Windows that perhaps are out of date. I mean, that's a big worry for a lot of organizations at the moment. The one thing I keep hearing from our customers over the last 2 weeks is they need to be able to provide a secure workspace for their environments. And they're very worried that, you've got Windows out there at home, whether it be 10 or Windows 7, that perhaps doesn't have the ability to be patched, doesn't have the ability to get updated. And so then there are tools out there that can help with that, obviously. But I think that is a major concern for those of us that are involved in end user compute. Tools like Zoom, GoToMeeting, Teams, WebEx, Skype, RingCentral, for instance, whether they're collaboration tools, whether they are unified messaging tools, all of these are going to prove extremely important to us. Likewise, the ability to use document sharing capabilities, OneDrive, Dropbox, Box, Google Drive, Citrix technology. Quite interesting. My son, working from home today, 11 years of age, he's probably come into my office 3 or 4 times today because his teachers are asking him to upload files onto SharePoint. He's trying to work out how he can sync his local files on his PC with his OneDrive storage that the school have given him. So, just challenges along the way that very, very difficult to sort of support these people who perhaps are new to some of these technologies. I mean, ideally the teacher almost needs to get on a Zoom call to teach someone how to use Zoom, and that obviously doesn't work particularly well. And SaaS applications obviously can play a very big part in all of this as well. We're fortunate that lots of our daily applications now have moved to SaaS, which means arguably that the local operating system that we're using doesn't matter as much, and that we can access them via a web browser. So people are still able to access things like Workday and Salesforce and perhaps Dynamics and ServiceNow, for instance. But as you know, not all applications have gone down that route. So you look at all of those technologies that are out there, unified endpoint management, patching solutions, collaboration tools, enterprise file sync and share tools, SaaS-based applications, and yet we've still got some concerns. And those concerns really come down to the fact that, bandwidth is a limit. Not enough not enough people have got fiber to the door. There are more people now working from home, which means our contention ratios are put under stress. We've got more than one adult working from home. You might have children doing schoolwork in the morning and then all of a sudden jumping on their Xboxes in the afternoon. Bandwidth is an issue. Not all of our applications have moved to SaaS either. So a lot of business line applications are just still on Windows or still using back-end systems with a front-end Windows application, and moving them to a SaaS platform just isn't possible. But the biggest concern, I think, that, as I said, we're hearing a lot at the moment is that people are worried about the endpoint. They know that they can deploy certain applications via a web browser. They know they can get people their data, but they don't know what device those users are using as an endpoint, or that endpoint that they've been given is an unmanaged one, or more importantly, one that was sat inside the network historically, and now it's outside the network. I had some very interesting views as we were leaving our office a couple of weeks back and seeing people from another organization not lug laptops out, but actually put tower PCs and big monitors underneath their arm and put them in the boot of the car as they're working from home. But a lot of these endpoints weren't designed physically, but also from a systems point of view to live outside of the network. And so there are some concerns around that. So how do we keep them up to date? If we're on Windows 10, what are we going to do about Windows 10 as a service? If they're running Windows 7 and you are halfway through a migration project, how are we going to deal with that? And how do we deliver that secure endpoint? Well, what we're seeing at the moment is a significant increase in the amount of VDI and desktop as a service that people are looking at. VDI and desktop as a service gives people the ability to deploy those line of business applications that are on Windows in a very secure, bandwidth efficient, and very, very simple way. So whether you've already got Citrix or VMware on-prem, whether you're already using a desktop as a service solution like Microsoft Windows Virtual Desktop or Amazon, whether you're making use of even the new technology like the Nutanix Frame, these are all ways in which we can deploy secure, easily centrally managed Windows 10 desktops out to our users remotely. It doesn't require a great deal of bandwidth. If they do need patching and updating or applications running out to them, we can manage them significantly centrally and manage them significantly better. And it gives our users the ability to get access to those desktops, those applications, and that data in a far better way. But nevertheless, it still raises concerns for a lot of our customers about the endpoint, even when we are using VDI and desktop as a service, even though the processing power is taking place up here in your data centers or in the cloud. What does happen with that endpoint? And is there a way in which we can actually get people securely logged on? And that's where the IGEL operating system comes in. IGEL operating system is a secure, read-only, Linux-based operating system. It's based on Ubuntu. It's 64-bit. It's completely configurable. It can be centrally managed. You can have tens of thousands of endpoints being managed and configured by one person. Those devices, excuse me, those endpoints that are running the IGEL operating system can be managed both locally and remotely, so we can manage devices at home. Mike's going to show you how we can do that. It provides a very simple but familiar and performant user interface, and the IGEL OS has the ability to be deployed in a number of different ways, which we'll come on to. That IGEL operating system actually is very special, in fact, because it has a number of technologies already built into it as well. Technologies that allow you to connect to Citrix, VMware, Microsoft Windows Virtual Desktop, Amazon Workspaces, drivers and support for offloading, for voice over IP type of calls and technology, support for various different types of headsets, analytics tools, printing tools, single sign-on tools that allow you to log in securely, things like device trust that give you contextual control over your environment, the support for cherry keyboards that can encrypt everything you type from the keyboard all the way through to a back-end infrastructure. It's an operating system that's fairly mature now in terms of its life cycle, and it allows us to deploy an operating system that not only a user can use, but also an IT administrator can get the very, very most out of as well. Today, we're actually talking and focusing on our UD Pocket. Our UD Pocket, I've got one here. Mike's going to show you one in a second as well. The UD Pocket is a USB key. It's a USB key designed and created by ourselves. We put the IGEL operating system onto it and then we send it out. It gives you the ability to send out a very small USB key to all of your users and allow them to dual boot their existing machine into the IGEL operating system. And again, Mike's going to show you this in a second, but take a x86 device and instead of booting up onto the operating system that is currently installed, boot off this live USB key. That IGEL operating system, by the way, goes on this USB stick, but you can also download it. You can run it as a VM. You can deploy it via a systems management tool such as SCCM or one of those UEM tools that we spoke about, and you can convert an existing machine to the IGEL OS. Alternatively, you can buy IGEL on one of our thin clients, and we have a range of thin client hardware. And actually, at the moment, what we're seeing is a lot of organizations are both buying these UD Pockets, but also acquiring our thin client devices and actually sending those out to people's homes. So people have literally just got to have a keyboard, a mouse, a monitor, and then an IGEL piece of hardware running the OS that then gives them the ability to gain access to any of those environments. And once you do that, and once you're up and running with IGEL OS, you can then connect in to any VDI or desktop as a workspace platform, whether that be VMware, Citrix, WVD, Amazon, or something running on Nutanix frame as an example. Not only that, but we'll give you the ability, because we come with a built-in web browser, to connect into all those SaaS-based applications, and probably most importantly, Office 365. If you take a look on LinkedIn this week, you'll see that one of our customers has worked with us this week so that their IGEL operating system is actually running the Zoom client for Linux natively on the operating system, and there's also some beta work going on with Teams natively as well. But you can open up a web browser, you can access a lot of your web-based SaaS-based applications. Alternatively, we'll connect you into either an on-prem or a cloud-based Citrix VMware type of environment, and you'll be able to run all of your virtualized desktops and applications. I'm going to finish up by just going through a quick architecture slide, and then I'm going to hand over to Mike because I realize I'm talking for far too long. But lots of people say, well, how easy is it to manage, and how can it be managed? It's very easy. In fact, the operating system goes on the device or onto this USB key. So here we can see IGEL OS running on a number of IGEL thin client devices, running on some IBM Lenovo Tinies, on some Dell thin clients, on some HP thin clients, on a couple of tower-based PCs that were running Windows 7. IGEL can run on all of those devices and be completely centrally managed and configured on premise, on the LAN. Alternatively, we can then introduce what's called the IGEL Cloud Gateway, which can sit either in your DMZ or in the cloud, and that gives us the ability to remotely manage and configure devices outside of the network. So my laptop, my other Mac top down here has got a UD Pocket plugged into it that can be managed remotely from across the internet by this IGEL Cloud Gateway. Likewise, any PC that we're just about to see can be managed when they've got the UD Pocket placed into it. And so on that note, let's get on and hand over to my friend Mike.
Thank you.
I'm going to stop sharing.
All right.
And then we're
Well,
going to
I am going to join. Thank you, Simon.
My pleasure.
I appreciate it. And appreciate all the questions from the chat. I know that getting these things up and going, it's hard, I think, from a vendor perspective, right? As you know, a lot of vendors do, to kind of organize the way you need to when you had just a few days to get things going. So hopefully this will be this will be a little bit more seamless when it comes to doing those things for sure. So, alrighty, let's jump into it. And look, this is an open discussion. Okay, you can see I'm in my home. I have my T-shirt on. Simon mentioned been working from home for quite a while, but obviously a lot of you are new to it, right? Some of you are new to it, especially in Europe, and that's completely understandable. It's just different isms when it comes to those things, and that's totally fine. So let's jump into it. And what we're going to do today is I'm going to show you some hardware. I'm going to show you a demo of how it works on the laptop, how to manage it, some of those changes that can be done instantly, and we can answer questions from there. Okay. So real quick, here's a UD Pocket. As you can see, it comes with this nice pretty box. Inside is this little USB key, as you can see. Now, again, the emphasis on security is becoming critical. I think many of you have probably seen the rhetoric, the articles, the blogs around security and why security is so important, especially work from home, right? I know a lot of you are probably jumping into a work from home scenario. I don't want to say haphazardly, but probably unprepared, especially with IT minds, right? there's a mindset you want to have to be like, oh, is my VPN working? Do I have the right Active Directory permissions, right? Is my firewall set up to accept these things and to separate people, right? There's so many things to evaluate and to consider. So obviously IGEL can help simplify that with something like the UD Pocket. Obviously we have another piece of hardware here too. This is what's called a UD3. This is an IGEL piece of hardware. It's one of the latest and greatest. You can see here, there is a USB-C port, some super speed USBs, as well as some other features on it that create really just a nice thin client that you can use. So just a kind of a visual to help kind of understand exactly what this means. But really the benefit for IGEL is our ability to take any pretty much x86 device, Intel, AMD processor based, could be a Mac, could be a PC, and repurpose it, right? We could install an operating system on it. We could run our secure operating system from USB, multiple ways to consume it, right? So when we go over this today, and I'm gonna go plug this in a second, we're going to show you that dual boot scenario, right? Let's imagine that you had to go home and work from home instantaneously. Obviously, your users have some kind of device they use at their house, probably a Mac, PC, something like that. Maybe you do have a slew of a certain number of devices that you keep in your back pocket to make this work. Bottom line, we can definitely help in a secure manner with this, and we'll show you how. One of the unique things about the IGEL operating system is it is read-only by default, meaning that you can make changes to it, but the minute it's rebooted, the minute a change happens, it'll revert back those changes, number one. And number two, by default, we encrypt the entire partition of the IGEL OS. So it's all fully encrypted from us, standard out of the box. So when it comes to worrying about those things, there's a security posture there that I think you can get behind. All right, so let's take this guy. I'm gonna switch over to my laptop and show you exactly what this means when we actually plug it in. So switching over live, this is actually my wife's laptop. It is actually running Windows 10. It's been asleep here as I've been preparing to get it back up and going. There we go there. Hopefully everyone can see this. It's kind of the main screen. I know excellent. I have the YouTube stream open as well, and I know it's a little bit laggy, but that's okay. So we'll just continue on. So you can see here, it's my wife's laptop. She uses it for some of her different activities. It's an old Dell Latitude E6430, so not a lot of horsepower. I think I did upgrade the hard drive to an SSD. So here is the UD Pocket. You can simply plug it into the USB port of the device. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to boot from this device. So do a quick restart. Now, the biggest operational challenge you may have when using UD Pockets in your environment is assisting users on what the keys are, how to manage them actually booting from USB, which it sounds minimal, but it's definitely important that they feel comfortable you know, hitting the keys. If it's a Dell, if it's an HP, if it's Lenovo, if it's you know, IGEL, even if it's a Mac, you know, how do we do that? We do have a KB article. If you go to kb.igel.com and type in like boot from USB, there's a KB article that goes over some common pieces there and some best practices. The other concept here is our ability to operate in almost any kind of BIOS boot environment. So we can do legacy, obviously, which is basically just pop on a USB and boot off it. Moving up the stack, we can also do UEFI, right? So if a lot of you have standardized on UEFI, if you have newer devices, we can absolutely adhere to that, as well as we can actually operate within a secure boot environment too. You can see my secure boot at the top middle there is off, but we can obviously operate within that. So I'm just going to choose USB storage device. And you can see it boots right into the IGEL OS from the USB. Now, again, the operating system of this laptop is on a separate SSD. It's secured. It's, you know, not being touched at this point. Again, read-only operating system, encrypted by default is what you see here. So there we go. It's popping in, and there's a second piece to the IGEL solution besides the OS. It's very dynamic as well as ability-driven. And that is what's called the IGEL UMS, or Universal Management Suite, which is our one pane of glass management platform that sits on top of, you know, a single IGEL device, or it could be tens, hundreds, or even thousands of IGEL devices to allow you to manage that remotely. So what I'm going to do now that this is up is I'm going to switch over back to my laptop, and I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to jump into what actually the UMS looks like and how to actually manage things and what the effect of that looks like. Okay, so on my screen, as you can see now, I'm assuming, is that correct, Simon? You can see it? Excellent. You can see a bunch of different stuff here. So the best way to describe how the IGEL UMS works is it's almost exactly operationally like Active Directory. So over here, you can see these different profiles that you set up. These profiles are based on multiple options that you choose. Again, it's like group policy. You can take one option, one feature, put it into one policy, and then down below here, you actually create your own unique folder and directory structure, as you can see here. In this directory structure, you can then apply different policies to that directory structure and the devices that live below that. So you can see here, this is my UD Pocket. There's a bunch of different information about it, but then you can see over here the objects that it is inheriting when it comes to these policies. So I have something called Office 365 with Firefox on it. I have some Wi-Fi pieces as well as some shadowing abilities that I'll show you here in a second. Again, very Active Directory-like. So let me move over to the shadowing piece to give you guys an idea of exactly how easy this is to support your people remotely. I know one of the hard things is hey, when I move here, do I have to RDP in? How does that work? With IGEL, you can create a simple policy, a secure policy no less, that when you click shadow, I can actually create a secure VNC connection through the inherited certificates that are part of the UMS to actually make this work. So when I click connect here, there we go. Now I actually have my session into my laptop that's secure VNC. You can see my little lock here that indicates that it is secure. So let's walk through exactly what different sessions mean in this case. So you could even start the very simple, the very most simplest kind of permutation of this, which is the fact that maybe there is no remote server protocols or setup that you have in your environment, right? Let's imagine you have just Office 365, but you need to somehow enable your users, right? You have no Citrix, no VMware, no Microsoft, no Amazon, nothing. Let's just imagine it's just web apps that you need to give them in a secure environment. So one thing that we can do here is there's a built-in browser that we can turn on inside of IGEL and allow you to configure to automatically connect to things. So I have this one configured, and you can name it whatever you want. This is actually configured for Office 365. I'll come up here in a second if I can understand how to double click. No, it's coming up here in a second. And so what'll happen is when this turns on, there will be a tab that'll actually show the Office pieces that are happening. So coming back to kind of the UMS, the other piece that's happening here is this is just one of the sessions. right? There are actually multiple sessions that are available here. So let me show you exactly what this looks like when we actually jump into running a different session if we need to change things. Again, I think the Firefox piece is having an issue. It's always fun when you're doing a live demo and something like that happens, but that's all right. So let me take my UD Pocket, right? And let's move up the stack. So obviously we can see that, you know, you can configure a web browser for Office 365, but what does it look like when we want to do something like Citrix or VMware? How easy is that? So here under what I call full session, I've got a couple of policies. I've got one called Citrix, one called VMware. These are actually policies that are running to configure those different protocols that you can have in place. So what I'm going to do here is I'm simply going to drag and drop this UD Pocket, this device, into a new folder. I'm going to click yes, and I'm going to click when should these changes take effect. I'm going to click now, and then I'm going to switch back to my environment. And you can see that from a timeout perspective, I'm actually changing the entire profile of the way I'm connecting in a secure manner. So you can see it gets rid of the Firefox web browser, it disables that, and then it puts two new icons on my screen, a Citrix and VMware. Now I know some of you are saying, you know, not everyone has Citrix and VMware. That is true. So in this demo, the concept is that IGEL can actually do multiple protocols based on your environment if needs be. So as an example here, I have my credentials embedded. So I'm going to actually log into Citrix really quick. And when I'm logging into Citrix, I'm actually going to log into VMware as well. And I'm going to show you exactly what this looks like and the power of what you can do. So here, VMware, here's my different desktops. I'm logged into kind of their test drive piece. So I'm going to load the VMware piece as my Citrix one is logging in. As you can see, I'm just grabbing just a desktop that's here. There's a lot of options under the hood. Okay, these demos are mainly just to kind of show the abilities of how quickly and easily you can set up an environment and ensure that these are working the way you need them to work. So as that's logging in, we'll go back to our desktop, and you can see from a Citrix perspective, we've actually published different applications on this desktop, right? These are actually published from the Citrix storefront that we can actually use in real time. So if we wanted to, we could use things like Microsoft Publisher, and it'll actually open that and run it as a native application right in IGEL in a secure manner through the Citrix environment that you have set up. Back to VMware, obviously we can kind of change the dynamics of this too, so that you can have a nice desktop to work from in this case too. So here's my Windows 10 workspace inside of VMware, and there's my publisher coming up in Citrix as well. So again, the ability to run published applications from Citrix, you can run desktops from Citrix, you can run VMware from a published application or from an individual desktop standpoint as well. So you can run all those types of things quickly and easily.
Hey, Mike, one of the
yes.
one of the common questions that we get asked is, okay, fine, what you're showing us now is we boot into this operating system where we get a familiar desktop environment, and then obviously we're publishing applications and icons that allow us to log into Citrix VMware. We do have the ability to log straight in, right? So on boot, we can ultimately launch into that VMware desktop. We don't need to present the IGEL desktop to them if our customers so wished.
Great point. Yeah. So typically in a lot of circles, and what IGEL calls that is kiosk mode. So the ability to actually run into a mode where the user might only see the boot up screen from IGEL, like we saw when the laptop was booting up, but then it'll actually go right into the login screen of your remote protocol of choice, or it might just automatically log in based on some environmental variables that you set, where the user just sees the end result, which is their connection to Citrix or VMware or whatnot. So absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. So the other concept here is, okay, let's imagine that we have Citrix or VMware, and I'm going to log off of Citrix really quick there. But maybe we want to actually use something newer like WVD or Amazon Workspaces. How do we do that? So let me go back again really quickly to my management plane here. I have a session policy built out called Microsoft WVD. So if I right click this, I can actually edit the configuration. I can show you exactly what it looks like and how to actually configure one of these sessions. So commonly, kind of like group policy, when you edit one of these, it's going to bring up all the different options that are inclusive for IGEL. The one cool thing that IGEL does is it highlights anything that's actually configured for this policy in blue. So you can see this light blue here for sessions. You can go all the way down here to WVD in light blue, and you can see that there are these options in blue that we have configured for this session. So you can do things like auto start, where it'll auto start when the device boots up. There's multiple login options, gateways, different options that you can pick here. The concept here is really showing you the power of what you can configure in an automated fashion, so that when this policy is complete and set up, I can simply drag and drop that right to where my device actually lives. Again, my full session folder that I have. And now when I switch back to my IGEL desktop, it's going to automatically throw that on there. So it's that quick and that easy. Once this is complete, a user can quickly jump in. And let me see if I can type my name right, which is always fun. I know a lot of you as IT people, it's always fun when you have someone looking over your shoulder and they're trying to type a password. You've done it 100 times right before, but it's always that one time. So you can see here, I'm logging into my actual Microsoft Windows Virtual Desktop session. So here is the Windows Virtual Desktops I have available to me. Microsoft Windows Virtual Desktop is a brand new Windows as a service that Microsoft released back in September. So you can see here that I am actually turning mine on and connecting to my Windows Virtual Desktop session, and there we go. It was that easy. So I didn't have it before. Now I actually gave you the ability. So one of the concepts here is, if you have Citrix, if you have VMware, but you might have remote workers or some brand new people that are more task worker-ish that need basic applications that you want to put and give them the ability to work from home and put them in a situation that allows them to work effectively. Maybe something like enabling WVD in a temporary measure can enable you to do this. As another example, and you can see here, here's my browser. So here's my Windows 10 session that I have up and running here. So I can quickly actually disconnect from here as well. And then I'm going to get back to my IGEL desktop. The other concept here is that, as Simon mentioned, a lot of companies like Zoom, Amazon as well, they've actually created programs during this situation that allows you to take advantage of basically a free tier that is much more expansive than a typical tier. So as an example, Amazon has the ability to actually give you up to 50 free desktops on their Amazon Workspace solution that allows you to actually use those. So here, I'll show you exactly what this looks like and how we can actually work with that. So one of the concepts here that we can absolutely do is sideload an application. So we do this through what's called a custom partition. A custom partition is basically just taking a Linux application and adding it to the IGEL stack in a secure manner. So here I have the Amazon Workspaces client. I can simply drag and drop that to my current session. And you can see here, I got a new configuration. And then what it's going to do is it's actually going to reach out to wherever the bits of this client are. They're going to sideload into Linux, and it is actually going to download those, and it'll create a new icon on my desktop of this. So where does this become helpful, right? Why would I need to sideload applications in IGEL when I have remote protocols like this? So a couple of different situations. So number one, if you are a task worker, right, and you need to get into maybe just basic Office 365 apps, but maybe you have a need for Zoom or for Teams or something like that, this gives you the ability to actually install those applications directly on the IGEL desktop, right? No need to get into a remote session if maybe it doesn't exist or you don't have the capacity for it. So being able to run those is very quick and easy. The other concept here is if you have a proprietary application in your company that maybe is Linux-based, you can quickly create a custom partition, then sideload that into IGEL as well. So here I can quickly bring on my Amazon Workspaces. I would have to get my registration code, but then you could log in and you could actually run it from there. So very quick and easy abilities to actually run kind of those cloud workspace applications, depending on what your flavor and what you have set up is, and actually run those. Again, great for situations with like someone like Amazon that's actually offering 50 free desktops to be able to do that. Any more questions in the chat really quick, and I'm gonna transition again to more of a security focus if not.
Yeah, there was a question from Dominic, which was, could you set up a password on the UD Pocket for it to be able to boot in case it got lost? I mean, ultimately, there is nothing saved to the UD Pocket as such in terms of user data. Obviously, there is a configuration which is sent down. You can enable what I would call multi-user support within IGEL OS. So, the thing we can boot up into our operating system, and then me and Mike can log on to the operating system in the same way that you would log on to Windows, and obviously see two different configurations. But we are bringing, as I put up in the chat window, we are bringing out some pre-boot authentication later this year to specifically address that concern. That if you did lose a UD Pocket, you wouldn't necessarily want someone to be able to boot in and see the operating system. But there's no data on that. Worst case scenario, that person would try and open up a web browser, log into something, or try and connect to one of the remote desktops, and then be prompted for a username and a password anyway.
Absolutely, and you're exactly right. That's exactly kind of the cadence is associated with putting a password on there. Again, if you think about IGEL, another way to think about it is if each one of your Citrix implementations, your VMware implementations, even your cloud implementations like Microsoft Windows Virtual Desktop, or even published apps in RDP, think of those as destinations, right? Like I want to go to a city, I want to take a vacation to one of those. What IGEL is IGEL is the vehicle to go to each one of those, right? You can load up the people that need to go to Citrix land, you can put them on, and you can just go. IGEL is a purpose-built OS for connecting to those. To Simon's point, there really isn't any data outside of the sessions that you're configuring on that device for that in a secure manner. We do have the ability to connect to Active Directory from an IGEL perspective. So you have the ability to actually go in to the back end and actually connect to Active Directory and tie in Active Directory credentials if needs be. So if you want to actually do something with a username and password, it's potentially possible, especially when it comes to actually authenticating people in these sessions through Active Directory. That's definitely a possibility. But at the end of the day, the security is there that we allow you guys to manage that through the data centers, your remote workplaces, even the cloud, rather than on the IGEL device itself, which makes it more secure.
Hey, just one other thing, Mike. Obviously, what you've demonstrated very well this afternoon is, or this morning, depending on where you are, what you've demonstrated very well is taking that UD Pocket and dual booting your laptop that has got Windows 10 underneath to the IGEL OS. Obviously, that's one option. If that machine that you've currently got at home, the Mondays laptop, was running Windows 7 or any operating system for that matter, but let's suggest it was Windows 7 and it was out of date and out of support, you don't just have the ability to dual boot, you could actually convert that machine to always boot to IGEL as well, couldn't you?
And that's another excellent point. So yeah, beyond the IGEL OS being more of a read-only OS just on a UD Pocket, the IGEL OS at its core from a technical standpoint is just an ISO, right? It's actually an operating system. So the ability to actually take a Windows 7 machine, to your point, Simon, right? Especially in a massive environment where you're doing this changeover. And look, part of the guidance here is Microsoft is really pushing for Windows 10 to be, in your data center, to be in the cloud because of the ease of management and the control that you have. So the ability to actually take these machines that are sitting on Windows 7, plug in, a UD Pocket right into it, convert that machine, actually overwrite the OS that's on there, the Windows 7 OS, with IGEL OS, and then connecting that to your Windows 10 environment now in your data center in the cloud is one of our key values here, right? It allows you to quickly move from Windows 7 to Windows 10 in a secure manner. And, taking a step back, maybe you're not ready for that. Maybe you want to do a pilot. Maybe For some reason, there's some Windows 7 apps that you're not sure about, but in the current environment, you had to do something like that. Then you have the ability to actually, take a UD Pocket and plug it into those Windows 7 machines, boot off those in your Windows 10 environment. Again, when you pull it out, it's going to go right back into that Windows 7 environment. So yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, a really good example of that. We've got a partner out there in the States who are Zentegra, who are currently helping a number of, or people that work for that organization are helping a number of schools repurpose some very old x86 laptops and devices. So instead of sending them out with the UD Pocket and having to get everybody to dual boot, they're actually just converting them straight away. So they just, you literally plug in the USB once, and instead of saying run it, what you do is you convert it. And so actually the IGEL operating system gets installed on the hard disk of that laptop, and then forevermore, that laptop then boots without the USB key in it to the IGEL OS. And that conversion, we can do that on a number of different x86 devices. So if you're not worried about keeping the operating system that's on an existing device and you need to repurpose an existing device quickly, then just deploy the IGEL OS and convert that machine, and away you go.
And to your point, I think the other to kind of round that conversation off, the other interesting piece there is we can actually take other thin clients as well that are x86 based, right? Some of our biggest customers, in terms of just sheer number of devices, are coming from environments where they say, hey, we have some old Dell or HP thin clients that we want to convert to IGEL OS. Do we have to buy new hardware? And the answer is no. Right? We can actually do an evaluation and see which one of those will work, and we can save you a lot of money that way to prevent you from going out and buying new thin clients, where we can install the IGEL OS right on top of that thin client. So absolutely, those are all great things to think about.
Yep, exactly. Sorry, Mike, carry on.
No, thank you. I appreciate it. I mean, these are all relevant questions, and hopefully this is giving you a good taste of what we can do. So we're going to switch gears into two different places right now. So we're going to switch into security, and then we're going to switch into exactly, what it takes to actually unplug a UD Pocket and how quick it is to go back to kind of just being at defaults again on that laptop. So here, going back to my my actual shadowed session, one of the interesting pieces here is that by default in IGEL, you have all these different options that kind of come through, right? So users could get into things like, hey, I want to see like the network bandwidth. I want to take a look at what the setup looks like so they can actually modify the local policy, right, on this device. How do I prevent my users from touching anything except the icons or the kiosk mode that they boot into, so they don't touch any of this? So switching back to our UMS, we can actually do that. Via some options and some profiles that we can share or we can walk you through. I've made one here called Enable Desktop Lockdown. So simply drag and dropping, again, this to my folder where my UD Pocket is, and then switching back to my shadowed session. What you're going to see here is you're going to see all these options actually move away, and we're going to move into a secure environment. So this, and you can see it closed down the network connection because it's resetting it really quick. So I'm going to reshadow on that device again. And you can see here, once it comes up here in a second, just connecting to Wi-Fi. Try again really quick. What you can see is that you'll be able to see a small interruption in the process, but then when it comes back up, you actually have a clean environment now that has 0 options outside of the session pieces that you decide to give them access to. Even things like understanding, I want to connect to a wireless network, or even locking down USB pieces, like plugging in USBs, preventing other USB devices to be plugged in. Those are all optionally things that you can do to create even a more secure workspace from an IGEL perspective. And then again, going back to the UMS, right? Removing things that maybe you don't need from this, when you're actually sure that you've dialed in exactly what your remote people need to do. So I can get rid of things that I don't need and quickly go back to my environment and see those actually happen in real time, where maybe I just want cloud workspaces now. So you can see those are both available.
Yeah,
Again,
I think
in a secure manner.
I think the interesting thing there for me, Mike, is that, you know, we're in a state of change at the moment, and sadly, we don't know what's going to happen in the future. And so, you know, as we try and scale up, scale down the needs and requirements of the business, then you may well find that, you know what, we just very quickly this week, as an emergency, we need to get as many people connected to our on-prem Citrix environment. Okay, fine. That's the Citrix environment that we've had for years and years and years. We're going to get everybody logged onto that. Next week comes and we suddenly realize that the performance of that environment, because everyone's logging onto it, is, you know, perhaps suffering. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go and spin up some Windows 10 machines in the cloud with WVD or Amazon Workspaces, and you suddenly need to take, you know, 10%, 20% of your workforce from Citrix and convert them and get them to log into a slightly different Windows 10 desktop. And I think that this level of remote configuration and flexibility, which means you can just deploy a new configuration and allow users to connect to a new virtualized desktop environment that quickly, I think is going to obviously pays dividends and really helps out, particularly when we're in such a state of flux.
Absolutely. And that's, you know, being dynamic these days is really what it's all about. Dynamic securely in security, you know, with a security focus, dynamic when it comes to, the environments you want to connect to. Those are all pieces. You did bring up one interesting thing, and we do have time, correct? I just want to make sure.
We are on the hour, I'm afraid.
Okay.
So feel free, but if you can do something quick, that will be good.
I wanted to show you exactly our ability to actually work with graphics enhanced devices in terms of, you know, remote instances, having graphic cards and working with those. We can save that till next time. But
Okay.
I think that's it for my end. I think I'm good. I'll turn it back over to you.
All right. Do you want to pull that USB key out quickly? We're currently viewing a full screen of the Dell laptop. So
perfect.
Probably.
So let me do that really quick. So even when you're done, simply take it out like this. The device will automatically turn off, and then you can just quickly hit the power button and boot it back up. You'll see how fast this older SSD is in here. Don't tell my wife. She thinks it's fast. I guess that's all that matters.
Then let the kids get back on it, and
that's right. There you go.
Instagram and Facebook. There we go. Back. Good. All right. Well, Mike, as ever, thank you very much for an excellent demonstration. Thanks for pulling all of that together. Thanks for the multi-setup. It's obviously challenging when you're trying to do a demo from home, and you've got multiple pieces of kit to work with. We will send the recording out afterwards. If I share my screen quickly, I've just got one more slide for you, which is really what to do next. There's a couple of things you can do next, actually. You can go to our community, first and foremost. There are 3,500 people on that IGEL community, all from end user computing, very experienced Citrix, Vmware, Microsoft, IGEL consultants, architects that really understand and know what they're doing. Lots of conversations going on within that Slack community platform at the moment as we help each other out. You can go to igel.com/work-from-home. That gives you a little bit more overview of the UD Pocket, and also gives you the ability to get in touch with us and order either an evaluation UD Pocket or get in contact with us if you want to know more about downloading the software, if you need any advice in terms of pricing and what components you might need. As ever, I think it's very clear, hopefully from what you've seen today, we do have a solution that can help. IGEL are trying their very best to work from home and support our partners and our customers to the best of our ability. I wish all of you good health, stay safe, and if you'd like to get in touch and learn any more about what you've seen today, then please feel free. But thank you once again for attending. We'll just pull up if there are any more questions that anybody wants to ask. We will try and answer those in the next 10 minutes. But other than that, we'll keep the webinar open for 5 more minutes, just in case you do have any questions. But thanks again for attending, and stay safe. Thanks again, Mike.
Hey, thank you. Hey, there was one question that came in, and maybe we can touch on this, is around the licensing. And not only that, if we can describe the licensing, if there are any kind of I like this Corona promo going on that IGEL is offering.
Corona promo. There is no Corona promo, if you like, but it does say, can I buy only a license for the ISO without the physical USB drive and make a bootable USB? The benefits of the UD Pocket, it's actually a transcend USB device. We ship it and we boot from it because of the quality of the hardware, but also the fact that it does have our certificate on it, and so it is regarded as a trusted device. Now, what you can do is you can download the operating system. In fact, if you look on social media or our website at the moment, you'll see that one of our evangelists has actually put out some documentation on how to download the ISO and make your own bootable USB device. So you don't need necessarily one of these, but what I would recommend is that you use a half decent USB key. You don't want to be using let's say a cheaper USB device. The other thing you can do is you can download the conversion software. So not the bootable version of our software, but the one that allows you to plug in the USB and it says, right, what device, what hard disk do you want to convert to IGEL? And you can convert the local hard disk. Again, if you look on our blog and you take a look at the most recent post from Frederick, one of our evangelists, it talks you through both those options. So you can you can simply go onto our website now, you can download, register, download the ISO, you can have a play, you actually get an evaluation period with that anyway, and then should you want to just buy the license at a later date, you can just buy the license. The licenses are portable as well, so let's suggest that you bought what's called a Workspace edition license, an IGEL OS license. You bought a license today so that you can use the UD Pocket. In 4 weeks' time, hopefully this thing has passed us, we will go back into work, and you want to use that IGEL operating system on a different device or on a thin client, then you can port that license over to another device as well.
Great question.
Yeah,
great question. Good explanation too.
Good stuff.
Excellent.
Right. We have got a few hangers on, but I think that's probably about it. Thanks very much for attending, everybody. Stay safe, as I said. Thank you, Mike. And keep an eye out. We've got a whole series of webinars coming up, both technical and non-technical. We're going to separate these two things out, but a number of webinars coming up in the next couple of weeks. How to get started with the IGEL management platform, how to configure certificates and deploy the cloud gateway, as well as some more in-depth ones on the OS and how to set up custom partitions, etc. If you need anything, then give us a shout. Many thanks.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.